at the end. So if you have questions for our speakers, go ahead and write it in the chat. And also, we'll be sending the recording out tomorrow or the next day. So if you had colleagues who had to miss the webinar, don't worry about it. We'll send that out for you. And without further ado, Ashley, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley Sefferman, and I am Apptentive's Head of Content. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Today, we are going to be talking about how media companies have a unique opportunity to leverage their in-app experiences to drive better consumer engagement and boost sales. So let's kick it off. And so today, just at a very high level, we're going to cover media and mobile, what the current stats are for the industry, and some examples around who's doing it best, who's approaching their apps, their in-app engagement strategies best. And we'll spend the bulk of our time really digging into 10 unique ways media companies can leverage in-app engagement to help them drive better sales. So that will definitely be the bulk of our time. Like Emily said, we're going to take some time to spend on Q&A at the end. So please, if you have questions anytime, please throw them into the chat box. We're going to be moderating questions, and we definitely want to take the time to answer anything that you have or want to chat about at the end of this. But before we begin, we should probably introduce ourselves. So Harvey, I'll pass to you first, and we'll go from there.
Hi everyone, this is Harvey. I'm on the customer success team at Apptimize. I've been with the company now for about 1.5 years, and in that time I've worked with a number of our large enterprise media companies in helping them optimize their mobile product.
And we're super lucky to have Harvey. He has some great experience in this area today, so thank you so much for joining us. And like I said already, I'm Ashley. I am Apptentive's Head of Content. So aside from driving the content and brand marketing strategy here at Apptentive, I work closely with our customers to help them tell compelling stories to their consumers and really to help them follow our best practices in engaging and listening to and retaining their mobile audience. So Harvey, why don't you tell us a little bit about Apptimize before we start?
Sure. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with Apptimize, we are the best-in-class mobile A/B testing and mobile growth platform. We provide solutions for A/B testing on native mobile apps, feature flags for gradual rollouts and controlled releases of new features, and instant updates, which provide for instant hot fixes and immediate front-end changes without having to use a code deploy. And so you'll see here the number of our large customers who've been with us for a while now and have run a number of experiments and continually optimized and iterated on their mobile product by using a variation of our optimized products. On the next screen here, here's some just real life examples of some experiments our customers have run. You'll see a real example of an A/B experiment, a feature flag, and an instant update that some of our large customers have run that have yielded pretty significant results. One interesting thing that we often see is something as trivial as a small front-end visual change, as you'll see on the left-hand side there. Variant A versus variant B can often yield results as significant as 40% lift in conversions and KPIs. So we see a pretty wide range of various projects that our customers launch and very interesting ideas that are being generated in the industry right now to make improvements to the mobile experience.
Awesome. So a little bit about Apptentive. So companies have had various tools to survey their customers through marketing automation capabilities to send messages, and have used App Store ratings and reviews to understand where there are issues within their apps. However, they've never had all of these capabilities combined in order to give a holistic view of the customer before. And that's where Apptentive comes in. Our software is the best way for companies to understand, engage, and maintain customer relationships. And we power companies to interact intelligently with the right customers in the right place at the right time to ensure their customer experience isn't disrupted. And we like to call that our right mobile moment. And this is how we do it. So everything we do is in-app, and is really exists to help create more loyalty with your customers and to help you listen to them. So a few of our features starting from the left. So we first start with in-app messaging, which we call notes. In-app messages are used to highlight new features, invite customers to take a survey, encourage app version upgrades, share new pieces of content, all sorts of announcements or ways to surprise and delight your customers, and more. We have a native surveys product, which unlike traditional survey methods that happen via email or the web, we're able to provide our customers with tools to target their consumers in-app at the optimal time and place. We also work in customer feedback. So unlike surveys, this is unstructured feedback. And when a customer is experiencing an issue, has feedback, or simply wants to talk to you, it's really essential to have a channel through which that customer can contact you, and we offer that. And then lastly here, we focus on customer support, which we have a tool called Message Center. And whether your customer service representatives are a team of one or maybe a team of hundreds, our Message Center dashboard makes it easy to respond to customer feedback and to have a response that can reach the customer in-app. You can use this dashboard directly, or you can sync to customer service tools that you currently use, like Zendesk or Salesforce, to help deliver customer success on your terms. So that is a little bit about us and what we do at Apptentive and Optimize. So let's not take any more time, and let's dive into what you all came to hear about today. So kind of starting to set the stage at a broad scale. When it comes to competing for new consumers, media definitely leads the way. Media companies today are in very fierce competition to garner new customers and ultimately to drive customer love through their massive communities. And with consumers becoming more mobile by the day, media companies really have had to adapt their content to consistently deliver high quality customer experience across all the mediums that are coming into play. And as media evolves to a direct-to-consumer world, nowhere is the competition fiercer than in television. Video really commands most of the revenue of any entertainment and media sector. We were reading a study by PwC recently, and they found that about $420 billion globally in subscriptions and advertising are through media and through this video sector. And as you can see in this chart above, many media companies are scaling back their pay TV packages as new channels for consumers to enter the mix. And although the research is showing clearly that most viewers are adding services like Netflix or Hulu to their pay TV subscriptions, it's clearly really disruptive, and the potential for this disruption is becoming more apparent. And for example, in 2014, the same study, 91% of US consumers said that they could see themselves subscribing to cable the following year. And a year later, that number fell to 79%. So 91 to 79, that's a really big difference. And it's only going to continue in terms of what these media companies are seeing.
Great. So in a 2017 research by Deloitte on U.S. media entertainment, they discussed the challenges and opportunities faced by media companies as consumers have drastically changed the way in which they consume news and entertainment over the past decade. As it turns out, millennials spend more time streaming content than watching it on television, and more than 20% of them are viewing shows on their mobile devices. Streaming services are growing rapidly, with around 60% of consumers using them monthly. Video on-demand viewers are expected to reach 209 million by 2021, up from 181 million in 2015. So consumers are driving many of the decisions, and the traditional broadcasters will need to act very quickly, much in the same way that some of these newer, younger, mobile-forward companies have quickly adapted to.
Yeah, and just like Harvey was saying, consumers of digital media have definitely gone mobile, and that's really where our discussion today with apps and that channel comes in. So in this same PwC study, today's consumers are spending 71% of their time on mobile devices using apps. And increasingly, apps are influencing how users consume media and entertainment as they become the preferred format for delivering content and also functionally rich experiences that drive engagement in that way. But considering the competition among the multitude of apps across social media and games and messaging, music, all of the above, it's considering all that and also the limited available real estate on our mobile device home screens, the fight for consumers among these media companies is already becoming brutal. There's only so many people, and they're all definitely fighting for space. So as you can see in the examples on this slide, the biggest names in media have already really placed their bets on apps and have doubled down on delivering an exceptional and fluid customer experience, no matter the device their consumers engage with them on. As apps are driving more consumption growth, including video, media companies really can't neglect the importance of their own apps in their business model. And especially with TV emerging as the key connected device for the video in the living room, providing a potentially larger context for apps in the internet, media owners really have to have a modern, user-friendly, and attractive mobile experience that works well on multiple devices and also that's a compelling destination for their most loyal fans. I really believe that the backbone of an app for any media company has to be the ability to arrive at a data-driven, but also observation-driven insights into fan needs that can uncover desirable new products and experiences that ultimately create cross-selling opportunities in existing offers and reveal potential improvements in services and features that can translate into a more engaged user base and active fan base within your community. And kind of tying all of this back together and why we're spending the time talking about this today, all of this and all of this industry data and kind of where it's headed really serves to drive customer engagement and revenues through your mobile experience. So that was a lot, and where we begin, we can go in a million different directions. But today, we've narrowed down 10 unique ways media companies can drive better in-app engagement and sales, and ultimately get in front of their competition. And just to keep things interesting, Harvey and I are going to be switching back and forth, just so you don't listen to one of us the whole time. So like we said before, if you have questions, throw them into that comment box, and we'll get right through the list, and then we'll get on to the discussion. So let's start with number one. So first off, we've got leveraging in-app messaging to promote real-time content. So promoting live television content in your app can definitely lead to a huge boost in engagement and ultimately more viewers tuning in who may not have, or I guess who you may have not reached elsewhere. So to explain and help support, let me use an example around how one of our media customers at Apptentive used in-app messaging to drive 55% of their app's consumers to watch their promoted content in real time. And just as an aside, I'll be redacting most of the company names that I talk about today for privacy. So just before we begin. But let's take this as an example. So one of our international media customers needed a way to promote their live TV content during last year's political events. And in order to drive a large crowd to watch their events in-app, they needed to send messages to customers that an important broadcast was happening in real time, just to encourage them to tune in through the app to watch. So the media company implemented our notes ability, so that's the in-app messaging feature, to send in-app messages in order to promote 3 different broadcasts. So they created 3 notes, one tailored to each broadcast, and created separate versions of the note for iPad and iPhone users. So that definitely can't be overstated. Whatever channel your customers are engaging with you on is definitely how you need to structure these types of messages in order to see the best results. Their notes were distributed during the broadcast in order to encourage a large segment of their customers to tune in at different times. And each note included a message about about the broadcast and an in-app deep link in order to take viewers directly to the piece of content within the app where the broadcast can be viewed live. So how did they do? The company that we were working with was really excited to be able to message these people at the right time and place, so that right mobile moment, going back to that. And they were rewarded with extremely high conversion rates, which it was able to help them drive more viewers to their highly advertised broadcast. So the 3 notes, just to kind of give you an idea of how long they ran on both iPhone and iPad for only 4 hours and 37 minutes. And in that short amount of time, our company was able to receive over 116,000 total views of their notes where users actually took action. And of those views, over 64,000 people, which was 55%, clicked watch now in order to access the live broadcast. And then for that second broadcast, 70% of the viewers actually clicked watch now, which, you know, that's huge engagement for any sort of company. So leveraging in-app messages in that way definitely helps point new people and new eyeballs toward the content in real time.
The second best practice is to test your onboarding flow to help increase signups. So Vivo is a longtime customer of Apptimize's, and they have been developing an onboarding flow that they've leveraged our A/B testing tool to test which messaging and which user flow works best to drive users to sign up. Vivo leveraged our A/B testing dynamic variable tool to test what number of screens in the onboarding flow will increase user logins and new signups. They're using a standard 4-step onboarding tutorial to convey value and encourage users to sign up or to sign in. The product team, however, wanted to optimize the onboarding tutorial to maximize the number of logins and new user signups. So the next slide here will show the experiment that they ran. It was hypothesized that reducing the number of screens in the onboarding flow would increase logins and new signups. The product team launched an A/B experiment by creating a variant of their 4-step onboarding tutorial. The new flow took users directly to a login screen after a brief splash screen. They measured experiment success based on a number of factors: successful login, successful signups, clicks on the skip button, videos watched, and first week user retention. The experiment ran for 28 days with over 160,000 participants. By measuring videos watched and first week retention, they wanted to ensure that the new onboarding flow didn't have unforeseen negative consequences for engagement and retention. As a result, the onboarding flow actually increased logins by nearly 10% and new user signups by nearly 6%. The new flow did not have a statistically significant change in the number of skips, which meant that the number of people diving into the app increased. The variation also didn't affect engagement or retention metrics, indicating that the new flow was the winning solution.
Awesome. So moving right along to tip number 3, asking your mobile customers for real-time feedback and NPS on new shows. So this example is really media specific. When launching a new show, customers are definitely the best focus group. You know, that's true for media and anybody, but definitely when it comes to media. Media companies really do have a unique opportunity here to leverage in-app engagement in order to help them understand how their new shows are received from their consumers in real time, which ultimately results in providing better content for their customers, which can go back to driving new sales. So for example, another one of our international media companies launched a new show that they wanted direct feedback on from. They were able to leverage our surveys and NPS tools in order to survey their viewers directly after watching the pilot, and also after the first few episodes of the show whenever a consumer watched through their app. So what we're looking at here is as the first question. They asked two questions around the show, and the first was the traditional NPS question. So how likely are you as the viewer to recommend the show to a friend, which is NPS? And after the response was received, the viewer also had a chance to explain their response in an open-ended text box, just so the company could better understand what that person thought about their experience. And as you can see from the data, they were able to collect great feedback from customers who had just watched the show, which is when their thoughts were the most impactful. The company heard from over 20,000 respondents immediately following their pilot and didn't have to wait a couple weeks to bring all these focus group. They were able to get away. And on the next slide, which is the second question that they asked, they were able to ask how the viewer would rate their advertising experience, which that directly impacts the, how they're monetizing these shows. It really helped them understand, tweak their ads, their mobile experience, and what they could potentially put in place that would garner a better response. The survey received a 35% response rate, which is huge. And the company was able to hear about how the show's earliest adopters, again, this was right after the pilot and the first couple episodes, how they really enjoyed the experience, and then also what they'd like to see improved. The surveys not only gave the company insight into their overall experience, but they were also a really good show of good faith to loyal customers who were more likely in this instance to watch this new show. So asking for feedback right away, media companies have an extremely unique example and an opportunity here to really capitalize on reaching people in real time.
Number 4, test your sign-up prompts. So Netflix has gone against many UI best practices, but it turns out they've had very good reason to do so. The first time you open up Netflix's mobile app, you're hit with the sign-up screen. Now, generally in the product space, people go with an opposite approach. They want to first show users the value of their app in order to motivate them to actually sign up or register. So the team at Netflix was hesitant to jump on this trend, so they ran some experiments and looked into the data for answers. Their hypothesis was, if users can browse content before signing up, user registration will increase. For the A/B test they ran, the team ran their original screen, starting with the sign-up page as the control, testing it against 5 different variants. Each of the users to browse through Netflix content, scrolling through genres, clicking on titles, before asking for a sign-up. And on the next slide, we'll see an example of what the results look like. As it turns out, the original against variant A before beating out the rest of the variants. So although every best practice around user signup suggested that previewing titles would increase registration, the team found the complete opposite to be true for their particular user cohort. Anna Blaylock of Netflix's product design team points out that this might be because Netflix is all about the experience. It's not necessarily the ability to browse titles that creates the Netflix experience. It's the ability to seamlessly find content and watch it. And this is something that users realize after signing up. So Apptimize also allows for over-the-top or OTT testing so that your user experience is seamless and consistent across all of your platforms.
Well, Harvey, I have to agree with you. For the amount of hours I've lost on Netflix, I think they hit that right nail on the head. Cool. So getting into tip number 5. So triggering in-app prompts to help support event marketing. So let's take an example. Award shows are really peak engagement opportunities for media companies, both with old and new consumers alike. And a lot of this engagement really occurs outside of simply watching the show live, like at home while it's going in real time on your TV. Media companies have an ability and an opportunity here to use in-app prompts in order to capitalize on these peak engagement opportunities. They can on the upcoming awards show through the app, and they can also drive new viewers to the content while it's live. So kind of a three-pronged approach. And on the left here, we'll use a quick example. So one of our awesome customers this year leveraged Apptentive notes, which are these in-app prompts or in-app messages, in order to help promote this year's Golden Globe Awards. So before the event, the company released an app update, and viewers had to have this update installed if they wanted to stream the show on their device. In order to view the event live through the app, customers had to upgrade to the newest app version. And in order to message this update, the company sent a note to help encourage those consumers to upgrade ahead of time so they could have access to the content right away, rather than updating the app once the show is already live, which that's a huge barrier to entry. So they were hoping in sending this communication proactively that they could remove that barrier to entry come the time for the actual event. So as the Golden Globes began, the company also sent another note to consumers once they launched the app, if they didn't get them ahead of time, to help ensure that the audience knew what was going on with the show. They were able to reach over 700,000 consumers with these notes, which drove a ton of new views and engagement opportunities, and also helped people understand, and were almost, they were more apt to actually take the time to upgrade, that they knew what was going on. So all in all, in-app engagement is a great channel to leverage when it comes to helping drive more eyeballs and helping share information about upcoming events.
So next step is very important to test whether a value proposition is right for your app. Summarizing the benefits of your app in a succinct value proposition right before the user sign-up process has proven to lead to much higher conversion rates and increased registrations. So here's an example of a large international media company that ran an experiment across several value propositions on the landing page. Our media customer offers a paid subscription package, which includes unlimited access to all digital content. Acquiring new subscribers, be it through the website or mobile apps, is critical to the growth and success of this company. The team wanted to streamline the subscription sign-up flow, which includes a monthly free trial across all digital properties. The hypothesis was that adding a value proposition to the sign-up page will increase subscriptions. In the experiment, our customer used Apptimize's visual editor, bypassing the need for engineering or design resources, to launch an A/B experiment with 3 variants. You'll see here on the far left is the default experience with no value proposition. In variant 1, they presented member benefits without pricing. In variant 2, they presented member benefits with monthly pricing and cancellation messaging. In variant 3, they presented member benefits without monthly pricing, but including cancellation messaging. Summarizing membership benefits before the sign-up button in variant 1 turned out to make no difference. Users also appeared to be rather averse to any mention of pricing. In fact, sharing the monthly subscription price with a cancel anytime message in variant 2 actually resulted in a 10% decrease in subscriptions. The winning variant, variant 3, summarized member benefits and included a cancel anytime message without any mention of pricing. This variant increased their subscriptions by over 17%. So the takeaway here is that while the monthly subscription price, membership benefits, and cancellation policy were identical for all variants, how and when these are communicated can make a significant difference in the actual conversion of new users.
Harvey, that kind of goes back to triggering at the right mobile moment, I think.
Absolutely.
Cool. So moving on to tip number 7, using notes to promote new initiatives, flash sales, quick announcements, and more. So media companies can also leverage their in-app experience to help promote initiatives. We have 3 examples of what Apptentive's media customers within their apps in order to do so. So first, on the left, one of our customers leveraged a note to promote a charitable initiative they were running called Stream to Fight Hunger. The company sent that note to 1.5 million of their app's consumers, letting them know that when they stream their favorite show or movie within the app that month, the company would donate a meal to Feeding America. So it was just a nice to know, kind of gave everybody the warm and fuzzy who received it, but also drew great attention to it to help encourage that in-app engagement during the month for a good cause. Second, notes are a great way to send one-time messages that consumers don't need to take an immediate action on, but when they still need to receive a message. So many of our media companies leverage notes for general announcements like playback issues or issues they're having with their app, version upgrades, scheduled maintenance, all sorts of things like that. The example that we're showing here is a few months ago, Amazon experienced an AWS issue that took down a significant portion of the internet. I'm sure all of you know what I'm talking about there. And one of our media customers was affected. So in order to notify consumers about what was going on, the company leveraged a note to send out real-time information around why people weren't receiving content and to apologize for the issue. So, an apology goes a really long way, like they say, and getting ahead of something like this and just apologizing for an experience that might be slightly subpar, even if it's not your fault, really is a great tip, not just for media companies, but for anybody. And then lastly, here on the right, notes are a great way to share tips about new features within your app. So as you can see in this screenshot, this note was sent with tips around how to leverage DVR capabilities through the mobile app. This company was able to promote a new feature using this note without requiring action from their mobile customers, which ended up turning many of their consumers toward that feature and encouraged them to use it for the first time. So again, messages in app, they really don't have to have an action on the customer's end. Sometimes it's just enough to notify at the right mobile moment in order to help drive that engagement and to boost happiness.
All right, so number 8, always promote new feature releases. Your team spends a lot of time building out new features, and there are often effective and less effective ways of promoting them. So when you roll out a new feature, you want to be sure that you're providing your users with features that they will use and that resonate with their in-app mobile experience. A general use case is to test new features on new users or on very specific segments that will provide the best results in sample size. As an example, a recent Apptimize customer wanted to test a new icon list feature over their traditional image-heavy map or grid feature. When testing the grid versus list feature, they wanted to understand what is the most efficient layout for viewing content to our users, and will our users convert faster with a list versus a grid view? So they decided to test it. A key factor in selecting list view versus a grid view is how much information a user needs in order to choose between items. But what does that actually mean? It all goes back to that main rule. Content is everything. And you should choose the layout that suits the type of content you're displaying and which content will resonate the most with your users. In our example, our customer found that the list view with icons greatly increased conversions over the traditional map view that provided a bit of information overload.
Awesome. And tip number 9 is measuring customer love. So in general, offering customers the option to leave feedback gives them a place to vent. And like we talked about above, sometimes just asking is enough for the customer, and turning your sites toward customer love is key to gauging sentiment. Focusing on customer love shows that you've not only connected your in-app and experience with your brand, but ultimately that you care, which really helps bring all of your feedback channels together. And measuring customer love is especially important around reviews. Our media customers leverage our love prompts or ratings prompts in order to help them gauge sentiment across their apps by using an emotional stop word, which is love. And as you can see in this example screenshot, Viacom, which is an Apptentive customer, uses ratings prompts in their MTV app in order to help understand sentiment and to measure love in that way. If customers don't love the app, Viacom has an opportunity to gain valuable feedback on how to turn the in-app experience into something they actually do love. The people who select yes are perfect candidates within this prompt in order to leave a review in the App Store and to give feedback there. Love, like we said above, love is a strong word that many people may not associate with most products or experiences. And so if people are actually responding yes to this, you can be pretty confident that those individuals will be very likely to leave a positive rating or review when asked. And then on the next slide here, we talk a lot about ratings and reviews, especially with ratings we'll focus on now. And although ratings aren't the most important piece in gauging customer sentiment, they definitely still matter a lot. Ratings directly impact your App Store conversion, which will directly impact your mobile revenue. And like we've talked about this whole time, all of this does tie back to boosting that bottom line and driving better revenue. So from our research that you can see in this image here, even the smallest jumps in ratings can hugely impact your App Store conversion. And when you make a more drastic jump, you can expect conversion to reflect that jump. So if you look at just I guess the biggest one on here would be the fourth one down, jumping from a 1-star rating to a 5-star rating. Obviously, that's as drastic as you can go, but you can expect your App Store conversion to increase by 770%. That's nutty, and it's all free, which is great. But even if you jump lower, if you look at the top line here, just a 1-star rating to a 2-star rating, you can still expect an increase of a 30% jump, which that's not nothing. That's still very meaningful, and will definitely help drive your organic downloads and views there.
All right, so the last on our list for increasing user engagement and monetization is streamlining your conversion funnel. So here's an example of what Spotify did to test their trialing period. Spotify shows users how the app can make their lives easier, especially compared to downloading music illegally. The team knows that once people have had the chance to use Spotify for some time, they would probably find it pretty hard to live without it. Because of that, the company has applied a prolonged 2-stage trial that allows customers to explore the full functionality of the app and convert organically. In the first stage, users can quickly start a 7-day trial without adding their credit card information. As soon as people sign up for this plan, Spotify wastes no time to pitch a longer 30-day trial that does require them to add their credit card information. Using this approach, Spotify builds a sound basis for its relationship with its customer base. The 7-day trial provides a painless way to experience the full benefits of the app. All it takes is one click, and there's no risk involved, such as getting your credit card information stolen or getting charged because you forgot to cancel. At the same time, this trial is just long enough to pique your interest and to get your user to convert to the longer 30-day trial.
Awesome, and those are our 10 tips. So thanks for sticking with us all. I know we covered many ways for media companies to leverage their apps to promote better engagement and sales. And we just wanted to list them below quickly. We can send these slides around at the end, but just as a real short recap around what we covered. Hopefully these 10 tips will give you a good place to start when you're either working to put together or revisiting your media mobile strategy. And I think we have a few minutes left to really jump into some Q&A. So we've listed our contact information on the slides here. Feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any sort of follow-up. But let's take some time now to go through questions that have been asked, and hopefully we can provide some good answers for you.
Awesome. Really great job, Harvey and Ashley. Thank you so much for sharing all those great tips. I'll get us kicked off with questions. So the first question I have is, let's see. Harvey, I think this one's for you. How often should we be testing onboarding?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. It really depends on a number of factors. I wouldn't say that there's an industry standard in terms of the frequency and the duration of testing. Ideally, you should be constantly testing your onboarding flow, your registration flow, your tutorial flow. But certainly, various apps have different user bases and different cohort sizes. So it's important to find a good mix of how many users it will take to participate in an experiment before yielding significant results. Typically, we see customers run experiments quite often between sprints and between releases, at least 2 or 3 every 2 or 3 weeks. So as long as you're consistently testing and continuing to iterate, any amount of data that you collect about how your users interact with various elements in your app and perform against your KPIs and goals and metrics will always be invaluable information for your product roadmap.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing. So this next question's for you, Ashley. Can you share some strategies for promoting your apps? Like, what are some best practices for driving downloads and awareness of your mobile app?
Sure. So in terms of promotion, traditionally there are really only 2 types, organic promotion and paid promotion. So we've found, and over my experience, I've also found that a good mix of both is kind of where your sweet spot is going to be. And this isn't just for media, this is for anybody. So if you're not working for a media company listening, this definitely applies to you as well. So in terms of promoting your app organically, ASO, App Store optimization, it's huge. It's the best way to make sure you are delivering what experience your app is going to offer in a bite-sized format. So including screenshots about your app, including descriptions that actually are helpful to people when they're considering a download. And also making sure that you're selecting the right keywords and that you're competing for the right search terms. ASO is very similar to SEO in that way. People are going to the App Store constantly and searching for different queries. So it's really up to you as a mobile marketer, or if you're on the business side of the house here, to do your research ahead of time. Make sure that you've really understood from the customer's point of view, you've created this customer-centric strategy around what they're going to be searching for and what they're going to be using your app for. We could spend another hour talking about paid promotion for your apps. But I guess the other thing that might be super useful in this context for media is you, as a media mobile marketer, you have so many different channels your customers are engaging with your brand across. Leverage those channels to show them even more they can do with your brand. So, for example, you see big media companies now that run commercials for their TV programming that say, hey, download this app, or Disney does a ton of this. They have all sorts of apps that are kid-centric that they promote across Disney Channel in all sorts of different ways. So really kind of taking what your strategy is currently, and sometimes it just means that you need to tell people an app exists. A lot of times in these big, heavy, long-running companies, people just don't know. They don't know that they have these great apps, or that they have spent time focusing on their mobile strategy. So making sure that your current customers know these apps exist through paid and organic is a good strategy, in my opinion.
Awesome, Ashley. Thank you. I know you could speak to that in a whole webinar of itself. But
Next time.
okay, this next question is about running experiments on different platforms. So Harvey, do you think it makes sense to have different experiments for Android versus iOS?
Great question. Yeah, and absolutely. What we've seen across working with customers who have large footprints in both the iOS and Android platform is that demographically, they tend to be very different users. And so it's important to think about them similar to how you would any other user segment. Males might interact very differently with your app than females do, and an older cohort versus a younger cohort. And this is very much true for iOS and Android. Many times we see our users begin by running similar experiments across both platforms, but very quickly that testing roadmap will diverge as they quickly realize that certain metrics and certain KPIs that perform better on one platform will yield very different results on another platform. So the most effective teams and the most efficient teams that we work with drive very different testing programs for both platforms, and they're able to build out very different products that are specific to those user cohorts very quickly.
That's great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this next question is around deep linking. Ash, I think this one's for you. So do people use deep links when they send in-app prompts or notes, and how does that work?
Yeah, so for those who are maybe unfamiliar with deep links, at a very high level, deep links are just links past the first page that you would see when you get to your app. So they're, if you have for lack of a better term, a home page, a deep link could maybe be a product page or an about page or something like that. It's a more specific page that you would want to direct people to specifically rather than just saying, go to the app. And yes, they definitely do. So with a note, for example, I think we can go back and we can maybe use just the same example around the DVR capabilities. So we talked about one of Apptentive's customers sending a note around DVR. So they were just saying, hey, this thing exists. You don't need to do anything. We just want to tell you about it. A better example in how you would use a deep link here would be to say, if they wanted to direct people to that section of the app, they would be able to link directly from the note to the page where that customer would see the feature or instructions or message or whatever they had. You can absolutely use a deep link there to send somebody directly to the piece of content you want them to land on, rather than just message one way, if that is helpful to you.
Oh, that's great. That makes sense. So this one is also for you, Ashley. They say, you said something about open-ended feedback around NPS. This seems like a new thing. Can you expand on that?
Sure. So that's right. NPS traditionally is, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you recommend to a friend? Or, would you recommend in general? And yes, that is a good tell just around what the sentiment is there, but you can go a layer deeper and also leave an open-ended feedback box at the end of that question. So although it maybe isn't a traditional NPS question, we've at Apptentive here, we've seen a lot of people do this, and they're actually able to take away a little bit more than just asking for strict NPS. And again, this is true for anybody. This isn't just true for media. If you give customers an opportunity to tell you in their own words how they're feeling, you would be shocked at how many great things they'll say to you. And I think it's just a matter of giving them the opportunity to do so. And an open-ended text field at the end of an NPS question is a super quick, easy way to do that.
That's awesome. Okay, Harvey, this next one is pretty fun. The question is, you've seen a lot of different A/B experiments, what are some of the results, or what's a use case that most surprised you?
I think the most surprising results we see are around these simple visual changes that often yield pretty significant results. So, sort of harkening back to the example of that larger multimedia company that who uses us for A/B testing, they run most of their experiments on very simple front end changes such as call to action, button sizing, button colors, and you wouldn't inherently think of these as really moving the ticker since they're relatively trivial to the overall app experience. But especially when you have a larger user base, sometimes something as simple as changing the color of a button or making it just slightly bigger or even swapping around positioning can yield results in the double digits. And we see this quite frequently, and it's often very surprising for us. And so that sort of, for us, reinforces the importance of constantly testing every single element and understanding that just because you might not have the mass resources to run some very sophisticated, large-scale experiments doesn't mean that your A/B testing program will not yield very significant results.
Oh, that's awesome. I love to hear that since we have apps of all sizes tuned into this webinar. So again, I wanted to thank our presenters, Harvey and Ashley. You guys did a great job. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We'll be sending out the recording in the next day or so, and we'll be happy to help you with A/B testing. Feel free to reach out to Harvey directly or help you with customer feedback and in-app engagement. Reach out to Ashley. So thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.